Welcome back, Space Watchers, to another live episode of Space Café 33 Minutes with, live from the ILA show in Berlin. We have the pleasure to have here as a guest Alexander Epp, the co-founder and head of business development at Marble Imaging AAG. Alexander, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. Oh, I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. This is my third day. I think I'm pretty ready to go home, but it's always a pleasure. So, first question, just to understand for our audience, what is Marble Imaging about?
Okay, so Marble Imaging is a freshly founded company. So we founded the company in August last year. And what we do is we are developing a constellation of Earth observation satellites. And once those will be deployed in space, our plan is to capture the whole planet every day in very high resolution. And at the same time, we are also developing our own analytics. So our plan is like a vertically integrated business model to be in control of the data and the satellites, and also then of the analytics that we are also developing. That's the plan. So
data and intelligence, fundamentally, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
So were you in the space business? So 2019 is yesterday, so it's quite 2022, you said, right?
Exactly,
okay,
exactly.
So
last year, yeah.
Last year, so it's very fresh. Were you in space before? What you were doing before?
No, not at all. So I'm not an aerospace engineer. Actually, I'm a journalist, and I've been working at the news magazine Der Spiegel for quite a long time, actually. It's 10 years. And how did we come up with a plan? So on my side, I've been working as a science journalist, mostly doing features, traveling a bit around the world and doing multimedia journalism, actually. So filming, gathering data, doing kind of those things. And in the last couple of years, it became clear that Earth observation is so important. And we use the data for environmental purposes, doing stories about climate change, for instance. And also in the last couple of years, when the war against Ukraine happened, we used it to cover conflicts all around the world and in Ukraine. So we got the data and we did news reports about it. I also was in Ukraine, so I had location-based intelligence, but also used satellite data. And that's what I did before, actually. So a journalist turned into space entrepreneur. That's quite a fascinating story. Maybe I should do the same. Maybe I should get into funding a space company. So I suppose you already gave me the answer, but just to make sure, why did you decide to fund Marble Imaging, and why now in this period? Is it because the Ukraine war prompted you, or something else? Actually, it's kind of a longer story, because a very good friend of mine, who's now the CEO of Marble Imaging, he's been working in aerospace engineering for quite a long time at OHB, so a big company. And he was also managing big projects, and we were talking about Earth observation for quite a while, and then it kind of manifested and became clearer that there is no European provider when it comes to dense Earth observation data. And we were thinking, okay, why is no one doing this? Because we need this, clearly, because all the data we gather is basically, or most of it, from providers from the United States.
Absolutely, of course. Planet, Max.
Exactly.
We should not name them, maybe.
I mean, it's competition, and actually they are doing quite a good job.
Of course.
But still there's some room for improvement, and what we do, we can talk about this later if you want to, is kind of a bit different. But of course, one of the very important things is that we thought, okay, it's also politically very important to have like an independent supplier in Europe. And because also when the war in Ukraine happened, there was kind of a switch. And at a certain point, the providers from the United States, some of them, they kind of stopped delivering the data as freely as they did before. So we, and also other companies we were talking to, we figured out, okay, there's really like a bottleneck, and we need a European supplier. And that's why we came up with this. We also have another founder, two other founders on board who are data scientists, who also know each other for quite a long time. So we have basically all the whole structure covered, from aerospace engineering upstream and also the downstream sector. And I'm not an engineer or a data scientist, but my part is mostly to make it, to make products and to shape Earth observation data in a way that also ordinary people can use it in the future. Because now it's often from scientists for scientists, and that's not what we want. We want also normal analysts to be able to use the data in an easy way to gather information and to make something beneficial out of it. And that's what we are working on.
And of course, it's part of the democratization of science, allowing the general users, the general public, to approach data, to have a kind of more immediate relationship with data set. And obviously what those competitors have done, and this is something that probably is also your contribution, is that they completely disrupted the market, because what you call high density data is like having images of a certain area, like a time scale that is much faster than before. Only a few years back, we were not used to we didn't have the possibility to see images every half an hour. We had images once a year sometimes, so once every 6 months. And of course, for certain things like monitoring a war, you need really much faster. So I suppose this is also part of the marble niche, providing data accessibility fast.
Exactly. So we're mostly not focusing on the military aspects, of course, but it is part of the dual-use aspect. So mostly we are focusing on environmental monitoring, for instance, and all the effects on climate change. But of course, and in both cases, it's very important to have timely data, to not only have data every couple of weeks or months, but to have it maybe daily. And that's the plan in the end, because for most of the use cases, you need this timely data, and also in a fairly high resolution, and that's what we are actually planning to do then.
So obviously you're entering in 2022 a market that was already quite rich, because Earth observations are not a new thing. And you mentioned something before. You say there is always room for improvement. So first question is, which type of challenges you are finding when you have to enter these markets? And second question, what do you think you can do differently? What is that you can provide extra from your competitors?
Yeah. So firstly, personally, of course, the challenge for us is, as a relatively new company, to get a foot in the door. So at the same time, I mean, the people in our team, they are very experienced, but the company itself is fresh. So we have to deal with all the things, setting up the company, growing as a company, and also being recognized, talking to politicians, talking to end consumers and everything. So it's lots and lots of work, and that's pretty time consuming. And one of the bigger aspects is also, of course, there is already a market there. I mean, there are companies working in this market for decades, and it's also hard to get part of or piece of the cake when it comes to this. But it is possible if you're talking to many people, and so that won't be a big problem at all, I think, in the end. And what we want to do better is, so there is still the need of very high resolution data in the market. That's when we're talking to people, when we're talking to customers, they say, it's the first thing actually when we're talking to them, we're telling them, okay, we want to have the data and we want to have the products, and they say, oh, the data, what kind of data? Okay, we're going to buy it right away. So because there is still some part that is not tapped into. And at the same time, there is no global coverage that is daily. That is also something that we want to do in the sector that we are doing. So we want to have a very high resolution. It's going to be like 80 centimeters of resolution. And we're also going to have, this is like in the visual and near-infrared spectrum, but also 3 shortwave infrared channels that we'll also have. And this combination of technology with daily coverage, in the end, that's something that's not there. And that's not there when it comes to European company in the end. So there are a couple of niches that we can fulfill in a political way, but also what the market needs, and that's what we are very quickly diving into.
Something that I remember it was mentioned to me last year at a climate conference. I had the chance to speak with end users that are not big players, and they come from different areas of the world. And I remember one of the problems they mentioned to me was the fact that their countries, the areas that they needed to get covered were so small that they could not use free global data. They could not really use Copernicus or Sentinel, or they could not use any Landsat, because the countries were so small, or they needed such a high resolution that was impossible for them. So I remember speaking with people working in Africa, people working in the Maldives, And they were like, the Maldives are so small that they're really representing a pixel. We need really high resolution, tailored data when you want to do serious environmental analysis. So this is maybe something that you guys can address. Tailored, high resolution, local satellite images.
Still, that's true, but there's also kind of a trade-off. So you have Maxa, for instance, I'm just going to name it. They are providing very high resolution, like very, very high resolution. But then, of course, you have like very expensive data that is on the spot. And we are kind of doing with the 80 centimeters, we are having a good mix, we think. And also something that we want to do and that we figured out when we were talking to lots of end consumers, they want to have repetitive data. They want to have comparable data. So what they actually need is really good quality data in a fairly high resolution, where you can have time series, where you can actually do change detection and object identification. Like those are the most basic things that you can most of the time also describe to people who have no idea actually what you're talking about. But this is like very, very easy to access use cases, and you need repetitive monitoring at a fairly high resolution, and that's what we are doing. So not like being with a super high scope there, but more like trying to cover most of the use cases, many use cases.
Of course. Another feedback that was given to me yesterday was easy, accessible, user-friendly platform. Because apparently we make platforms for engineers, and the end users, they don't know how to use them. So that's another interesting feedback. So switching a bit gear, we spoke about Marble, the general ideas, the general guidelines, your desire, how you want to fill the niche, what you want to do differently. Let's stick a bit to one of the things you said, like the need of Europe to have such platform, the need of Europe to have a commercial platform that provides this type of images. When it comes to Europe, we know that it's a heavily regulated place. I know the German situation a bit less, but I suppose Germany is somehow the reflection of Europe, and Europe is somehow the reflection of Germany. So probably also Germany is fairly heavily regulated, which is quite normal. How do you navigate these regulations, this heavily regulated environment? Which type of challenges does it poses for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it's exactly what you say. On one hand, it is fairly regulated, and on the other hand, it kind of feels sometimes like Wild West. So it's a mix when it comes, for instance, to a very, I would say, German word, the Satellitendatensicherheitsgesetz. That's something that's a couple of years old, but it's kind of regulating how you can actually deal with the data, whom you can sell it to, how you can work with it, and who's allowed to actually use it, and what you have to do in order to use it. And that is something that is kind of, that can be complicated once we have our satellite in space and want to sell the data. And that's something where we are already in talks with politicians, because we need some room here, some wiggle room, in order to also change it. And that's something what I think is very important to be included in the whole process of dealing with those laws, and also kind of tweaking it, because you want to be a competitor of all the international companies. And that's a problem, because many of them don't have those regulations, but in Germany and Europe you do have it. So that's something where we see some room for improvement, where we would like to include it. When it comes to national space law, I know that there's a lot in the making, so basically the same here would be awesome to be included and to talk about this, because the worst thing is that in the end you have a new law and the companies themselves are so bound and they can't do anything, that you can't compete with other companies. But at the same time, of course, it's important to have kind of a regulation because of insurance, because of investors. It's also an environment where those entities, they don't feel super secure if you don't have kind of a regulation. So it's a mix of the two, I would say.
And do you feel that there is a specific set of regulations, or a specific regulation that somehow is particularly challenging for the business? Is there something specifically that you think like, okay, this really should be rewarded, restudied, remodeled, limited?
It's again the Satellitendatensicherheitsgesetz, I think. That's something that we really have to work on, because this is also for new companies like us and European providers and German providers. In this case, this is kind of new. So that's why if you want to be a safe haven for new companies so that they can flourish, you also need to do this. But At the same time, I would also say we got lots of support on a national level. For instance, we won the small satellite payload competition, and this was like super low barrier. We basically sent them our specs, and they judged on the specs and of what we told them if it's a good project, and they said, okay, this small satellite, that's a good project what you're planning actually. And then we had basically the funding for our first satellite, or most of it, which is a lot. We got the support for this. So this is great, for instance, but at the same time, when it comes to European proposals we are writing, or some kind of European funding, it can be a bit tricky because it's lots of back and forth, and sometimes you don't have the feeling that you are supported in the way you would like to be supported. So it's a mix.
So that's very interesting. Do you perceive that the barrier is more on the European level rather than the German level?
You can. It's also you can't always say black and white. So on the European level, there are some things like we are part of the ESA Big Business Incubator, for instance, and they are super. They are really cool. They're helping us with. They helped us with the initial funding in the beginning. They're helping us with contacts and everything. So it's great. But then there are other projects where it's a bit more difficult. But I also get it's, and that's also something that's clear. It's public money that we want to have, and it's private money that we want to put in. And also because it's public money, it's totally fine to also assess if the project that we are handing in is good or not, because in the end it's the taxpayers' money, but it can't be something that's over-regulated, because then it's kind of complicated, especially for a small company that has to deal with like a million things, and then also this. But overall, we are happy, we are moving forward rather quickly, and we have lots of political support and public support, and that's why we're on a good track, and we are looking forward to everything.
So let's turn the question around. We spoke about the difficulties and the challenges of regulation when it comes to Europe and Germany. What can you do, you as a Marble, but also you as in general a small startup, a growing startup, to support your nation or Europe in strengthening the space sector in our continent?
Yeah, so the other way around, it's same but a bit different. So if we get the support, what would be perfect for us, for instance, would be if we have a big public contractor that would be open for a pre-contract. If we have a pre-contract, we on the other hand could say, okay, this is a signal for private investors that we then lure in order to make our project move forward. So that would be something then that we develop the products that in the end would be beneficial for Europe and for Germany, for instance. And when it comes to the overall project and vision, of course, having this satellite constellation of up to 200 satellites in space, this is something that would be beneficial for Germany and Europe, because we have the independency then and an independent data provider and analytics provider. And I think it's both. It's a mix of both in the end.
There is also the fact that we always have to remember that these are public money, so somehow we need to be aware of how small startups that receive public money, public funding, then they have to somehow give something back to the society, in my opinion, because this is a delicate factor, I know, when it comes to speaking about funding to small startups. What do you think?
True, absolutely. And when it comes to this, it's also about transparency. So doing outreach, doing education and showing what you're actually doing with the money, and also making it accessible for basically everyone.
Exactly.
Making it easily understandable, because that's something, coming back to the first point when we were talking about this, not only delivering data and analytics from scientists to scientists, but in the end that you have a platform that everyone can use, and that is beneficial for everyone. So that's very important, especially like what you said, it's taxpayers' money.
Last question, Alexander. What's next for Marble? Then what's your next step? Where are we going to see you next?
So we are working on different parts, I would say, of the company. First of all, we are setting up the company further. We are growing. We are now 10 people, and our plan is actually to grow further. Then we are doing as much business development as possible, talking to as many people as possible in order to get our name out. So that's why it's also awesome to be here and promote a bit what we are doing. And thank you for that also. And then our next big plan is actually also to get this first anchor customer to develop our first projects. We also have 2 projects in the making. It's in the maritime sector that we are also doing a lot, actually. And then we are also looking for a next funding round end of the year, where we're planning to gather from about around 5 to 10 million. That would be the plan in order to grow further. And then, let's see, we want to grow as organically as possible, reach out and see where the journey goes.
Takes you. Are you based in Germany, of course? In Bremen, in Berlin?
In Bremen.
In Bremen,
so
okay,
I myself, I'm in Hamburg, but we also have people working in Berlin and in Munich. So that's basically how the business works nowadays.
Life work, exactly. People don't want to move too far from their family. They just like to stay there. A good health, life, working balance. Well, fantastic, Alexander. Thank you very much. Anything you want to add? Something I didn't ask? Some details? We have
only we are at ILA here, so if anyone wants to talk to us, we are still here until Sunday, and we are at the Hall 2 at the Bundesministerium für Wirtschaft und Klimaschutz.
Okay.
So if someone wants to know a bit more about our tech specs, that would be great. We would gladly talk to them, and also on our website, if people are interested, please get in touch with us. We are always happy for an exchange and to talk to people.
Absolutely. This is also why we do this, to allow small companies, new companies to grow and get to know. So I will definitely come to check you out. Alexander, thanks a lot for this pleasure. Thank you for explaining us what Marble is. Congratulations, and obviously the best of luck for the future of Marble imaging. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. This is it, and I will see you next Space Café 30 minutes with them. Thank you. Bye.